You're listening to A Radio. This piece is actually from Nigel Farage when he was standing up in the EU Parliament. It's entitled "George Soros has spent billions in the EU to undermine the nation state. This is where the real international political collusion is." You need to listen to this piece and ask yourself, what is Soros up to? And more importantly, as far as we're concerned, why is the Liberal Communist Party in Canada in bed with him? I think we should all be very concerned for the safety of Canada at the very least.
As Mr. Moscovici said at the start of this, the leak of all these papers and lists of people with offshore holdings has come about because of the Society of Investigative Journalists. But what's not been said this morning, and I think is relevant, is that the funding of these investigations came from one George Soros. Now, I say this at a time, I'm going to come back to so what, and it may have some personal interest for you as well. I say this at a time when the use of money and the influence it may have had on the Brexit result or the Trump election has reached a level of virtual hysteria. Just last week, the Electoral Commission in the UK launched an investigation to find out whether the Leave campaign took offshore money or Russian money. This came about as a result of questions asked in the House of Commons by one Ben Bradshaw, somebody linked to an organisation called Open Society. I just wonder, when we're talking about offshore money, when we're talking about political subversion, when we're talking about collusion, I wonder whether we're looking in the wrong place. And I say that because George Soros recently gave Open Society, his organisation, which of course campaigns for free movement of peoples and supports supranational structures like the European Union, he recently gave it $18 billion. And his influence here and in Brussels is truly extraordinary. Open Society boasts that they had 42 meetings last year with the European Commission. They've even published a book of reliable friends.
We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing ground.
Thank you for joining us. You are listening to A Radio, and this is the Morning Moment. We're on weekdays, 11:45 Eastern. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. This piece is from a Canadian publication. I think it's important to hear how important Canadians actually think they are, how arrogant they are at a journalistic level, and how naive they are to think their views on the world stage actually matter. They have zero understanding of world politics. That's more than clear. After all, Canadians elected a mid-ranged intellectual to run their country, someone who is an open racist, a person that lies continually, someone who, if they could ever get elected in the US in the first place, would quickly find themselves in deep water politically, if not legally. No, Canada has nothing to crow about and everything to be sorry about. A once proud, friendly nation has dropped, if not stooped, to the lowest levels of political correctness imaginable. The US needs to take no lessons from Canada. Rather, that of Canada would benefit greatly from being schooled in the art of world foreign affairs. When, of course, Canada has something to offer the world other than repeating the UN George Soros manifesto of world globalism, which has already been tried and found wanting. Your comments. Here's that piece. It's entitled, "The US is sinking. Maybe it's time for Canada to jump ship." It's from Scott Gilmore, and it's from Maclean's, and the links will be put on my site. There is no question the American ship of state is leaking badly. The question we should be asking ourselves as Canadians is whether we should help bail or build our own raft. Things are not going well for American foreign policy. At a geopolitical level, tectonic shifts in world power are leading to a relative decline in American dominance. China has risen to dominate East Asia, and with its infamous 9-line, it is projecting that power deep into Southeast Asia too. Elsewhere, Brazil and India continue to expand as growing middle powers, with Nigeria not far behind. And while the Russian economy remains smaller than Canada's, Russia is nonetheless able to push its sphere of influence into the Middle East. I have to interject there. Look on a map, my friend, and you'll see Russia's only next door. It doesn't have far to go. Unbelievable. It continues. Nonetheless able to push its sphere of influence into the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and the American election. Can you not see where this guy leans? Institutionally, the US State Department is in utter disarray. The Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has managed to badly alienate Foreign Service staff and allies alike. He is deeply embroiled in more than one of President Donald Trump's political scandals, and is often left sputtering, whatever that word is, left sputtering and red-faced as he tries and fails to explain himself on TV. And of course the captain is steering from one collision to another. Trump's ambassadorial appointees are regularly derided for their lack of experience and complete lack of diplomatic skill. The president has managed to offend everyone in the G7, while simultaneously coddling all of its enemies. He has sowed confusion and doubt in NATO, even pushing one member, Turkey, into the arms of Russia. And on the Korean peninsula, the president's on-again, off-again best friend Kim Jong-un continues to push his nuclear program forward. North Korean missiles can now reach Washington itself. Perhaps the most poignant illustration of how Trump's foreign policy has run aground came from the images in late October, well, it's still October now, of America's newly betrayed allies, the Kurds, throwing rotten potatoes at retreating US troops. You can argue that it was a long time coming, an inevitable result of historical, political and demographic trends, or you could place all the blame at the president's feet. But whatever it is because of incompetence or fate. There is no question the American ship of state is leaking badly. The question we should now all be asking ourselves is, as Canadians, is whether we should help bail or build our own raft. The instinctive answer is to grab a bucket. Traditionally, Washington has been Ottawa's closest ally. Our militaries are deeply integrated, and until this administration, our foreign policies were usually complementary. Our friendship with America has given us a G7 seat at the insistence of President Gerald Ford, a military shield that allows us to grossly underfund our own defence forces, and a powerful helping hand in times of need. In the halls of global affairs Canada, the orthodoxy is that we sink or swim with Washington, and therefore when the Trump circus, that's his words not mine, finally leave town, we should undoubtedly be there to help rebuild American prestige influence wherever we can. But what if we didn't? What if we simply boarded our own raft and paddled over to another ally? I'm not suggesting that we cut ties to Washington and become a prickly adversary, a northern Cuba. Really? Our economies are deeply integrated. There is that long border. And who needs a superpower as an enemy? But what if we decided to Trump-proof Canada? What if we consciously and ambitiously began to build a new foreign policy alignment in anticipation of the next American wreck? I'm not reading any more of it because it's garbage. You can read the rest of it, but I'm not going to. But I am going to rebut most of this garbage. Let's talk about American foreign policy first and foremost. For decades and decades and decades, America has bailed out most Western countries. China's been on the rise because we've subsidized, yes, Canada as well, has subsidized China, has subsidized India, has subsidized Brazil. Need I go on? President Donald Trump is telling them they have to stand on their own 2 feet. Now, Russia's a different ballgame. Russia is a natural adversary of ours in the West. They don't like us. That's the political class in Russia, don't like us. They feel threatened by us. So naturally they will build and build and build. But whose administration gave away half of Ukraine? Whose administration agreed a deal with the Ukraine that they would protect them if they gave up their nuclear weapons? It wasn't Donald Trump, was it? So this document that I read out to you is full of half-truths. And as for some sort of collision being driven by Donald Trump is making the G7 pay. And those countries that are being protected by the United States are having to pay more for their national defence. You can afford to be a socialist country when America's picking up the tab, can't you? You can afford to be one of the richest nations in Asia when the United States is picking up the tab, can't you? Why should the US be defending South Korea? Why should the US be defending Europe? Why should the US be defending Canada? Yes, Canada wants to trade with the United States, and the United States obviously want to trade with Canada. But Canada puts so many obstacles in the way, I wouldn't blame them if they stuck 2 fingers up at us. The biggest obstacle for trading in Canada is the French bilingualism crap. And as for North Korean missiles, well, you can thank Clinton for that. Because if he didn't declassify a key piece of equipment in the 80s that allowed missiles to be located in space and allowed that technology to be sold to Korea, of all places, they wouldn't be where they are today. So to blame Donald Trump, and Obama just kept kicking the can down the road. And then you've got 57 genders Trudeau in Canada, who is far than brilliant. I'd rather have a dead ant running this country than Trudeau. He'd probably get more sense out of it. He is bankrupting this country. We have nothing to trade with because we are so far in debt. This idiot doesn't even mention that. According to him, this is the greatest country ever. How can it be the greatest country when we got all that debt? America has debt because it was forced to buy cheap goods from China. And the previous administrations, 2 of them, were managing the decline of the United States. So get your facts right. Don't cherry pick your facts. Get all the information out. And there are no scandals in Trump's administration. They are manipulated leaks by the Democratic Party of the United States. Get all the facts out, not just the ones that suit your narrative in Canada, Mr. CBC. What a joke. I can only read so much crap, and I have to stop. He goes on to talk about trying to do some deal with the EU. Well, the EU, my friend, is about to collapse, so there'll be nothing to do a deal with at all pretty soon. So get your facts right. Find out what's going on and understand the biggest country in Europe economically is not Germany, it's Britain, the UK. And if they do manage to get out of Europe, despite the ruling class trying to put every obstacle under the sun so that they don't get out, the people who sign up and do deals with the UK will benefit exponentially. And Donald Trump knows that because he's a businessman. And any moron would realise that any country run by a businessman is far better than any country run by a politician. Far better. And a corrupt politician at that can skate on by through scandal after scandal after scandal. And I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Justin Trudeau. And you know that's true. This is a shameful, shameful comment in this piece. feel free to read it, but make sure you have a sick bag with you. You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab, Spotify, and email. We're on Spotify under the podcast section. Type in Canadian Politics with a twist and you'll find us. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass these links on to your friends. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com/A-Radio, EHRADIO, A-Radio. And please click on the like button. Join us Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 11:45 Eastern, and tell your friends and pass the word. We only tell the truth, not what the mainstream media want you to know.